Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday with Jeff Dover and John Barbin. Let's talk football.
Yeah, let's get at it. So we've got a bunch of stuff to cover here. Okay, so we're going to get started right away with college football. Ready?
Yep.
All right. So I guess I'll get going here. I started up before we review specific games. I have a category here that just says teams removed from the board. And in that category, I've got Michigan, Florida State, Notre Dame, and Colorado. Fair that Colorado was never really on the board as far as as far as a playoff contender, but the other three I think were expected to be playoff contenders, and I think they're absolutely not at all. They just showed themselves to be frauds, all three of them. And then
give me your list again. Who was it? It was Michigan, Colorado, and who was the other one?
Michigan, Florida State, and Notre Dame are all
okay.
Off the board as far as national anything.
Yeah.
They're just frauds. And then
Gotcha.
Colorado just revealed itself to be a joke of a team. So they're off the board as far as being significant in any way, as far as I can tell. That was just laughably bad. I don't know. We can actually launch right into that game if you want.
No, I think I agree with you. I think that the Notre Dame game, that was the biggest upset of the day. They were 28.5 point favorites to win that game and lost. And this year with the 12-team playoff, the conference champions automatically get in with a bye. And so the highest Notre Dame could have finished was 5th. And there was talk before about like if they could have one loss or two loss, would they still get in it? But that is a terrible loss. And so that's going to be really hard. I don't think there'll be a way for them to overcome that going forward. Michigan might still have a chance. I think that they still have a lot of stuff in front of them in their schedule, and they can obviously win their conference championship and still get in there. But yeah, in terms of have the opinions changed on those three teams? The answer is yes after week one.
Mm-hmm. And I guess FSU, we didn't really talk about how bad they are, but they eliminated themselves after the first two games. So they were, I mean, that's not really a review. They're just the other player that I had on my notes that at the beginning of the season people thought might be a playoff contender, and they might not win 6 games. So they're just that bad. I don't know if it's just DJU or if it's just the entire team. I don't know. Whatever. We're not really going to talk much about them. They're just the other preseason thought might be in the playoffs team that is just terrible. Now on that Notre Dame,
no, they started.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, they started the season ranked 10th, and so they were thought of a playoff team going into the season. But after 2 straight losses, and it's also how they lost. You know that the offenses look terrible with DJU, like you said, but they also have their defense hasn't been good, and that's the really surprising part, and couldn't stop the run. So it's how they're losing too is really hurts if you're an FSU fan.
Yeah, they got whipped. They got whipped in that game against Boston College.
Yeah.
And speaking of getting whipped, I think Northern Illinois just whipped Notre Dame. I think just whipped them on the lines.
They absolutely did.
That was just I have a note here saying NIU's just the better looking team. It's not fluky. It's not like they got lucky turnovers. But again, this is my little thought experiment. If you just subbed out the team's uniforms and the team names, and you were just told, here's 2 really good college football teams playing, you're just like, oh yeah, the NIU team's better. They're just a better team. If you just watch that game, like they just beat them, just straight up physically beat them. And I also have a note that NIU running back, that guy's a machine. Like he was single-handedly just running over Notre Dame. And I also have a note here saying same old Notre Dame, no QB talent, no wide receiver talent. So this
their wide receivers were.
Let me ask you this: how is it that the same programs, over and over, no matter who the coaching staff is, over decades, can always get a position group wrong? Like, how can Notre Dame always recruit bad quarterback? Is it like the recruits just the good ones don't want to go there, or they just constantly miss? I mean, here they're to the point where they can't even get a transfer right, let alone recruit a good one out of high school. They can't even get a transfer who's any good to show up there. Or I guess if Hartman could throw, he didn't have anyone to throw. I just don't get how one program or specific programs can be bad at a position for decades. And we're not talking Iowa with Kurt Ferentz, where you can tell where the problem is. It's the coach and his philosophy. How many coaches have they been through at Notre Dame where if I just say Notre Dame, the average college fans will be like, oh yeah, there's, probably a decent defense, might try to run the ball, no quarterback, no receiver talent. And that applies for the last 30 years throughout how many coaches?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely not working this year. I think Riley is a good QB, but I think this is part of the transfer problem, is that the idea that they're going to come in right away and be seamless and be great from the beginning is not realistic. I think that they're going to need some time to get used to it, and it's amazing how much poorer they looked at their first home game versus last week at Texas A&M, as it just looked like a completely different team, and they were. The offense didn't look good. The other note that I had from this game, too, was that there's two kickers from Saturday that have ice water in their veins, and one of them is the Northern Illinois kicker, because he had a late field goal in a hostile environment to put that game on ice, which was amazing. And the other one was at Iowa State. So I had the ice water in the veins kicker was one of my notes from this game, too, because that was really impressive.
All right. Well, I'll follow you on that. Do you want to move on to the Iowa State-Iowa game?
Sure.
All right. Once again, on my theme of teams that can never get a position group right, Iowa. Now, in this case, we know it's Ferentz, and he couldn't care less about an offense that can do anything. And I feel bad for the Iowa fans because you've squandered about 2 decades of stellar defense with no concept on offense. And I thought maybe once they got rid of Brian Ferentz, it matters, but it doesn't. They're just terrible. Their philosophy's awful. Their talent's awful. And they're a half a team. They're like an ultimate half team. And it caught up with them in this game. Ferentz has got to go. Like, he's had his time now. They can clearly recruit some kind of talent there. They're always winning 9-10 games with a half a team. Imagine if they even had just a competent offense. They'd be, just who takes this team seriously when you see how bad their offense is? Like, it's just so bad for the fans.
When J.J. McCarthy went there, I thought that might be a little more dynamic, action at the quarterback position. But you're right. They've had an all-world defense for a long time. And even with just a competent offense or running offense, they'd be unstoppable. And that's really why they have won that many games over the years. But it's the same old Iowa, that's for sure. And if the defense doesn't pitch a shutout, then they're at risk of losing the game. Which is a terrible position to be in. But again, that Iowa State kicker, I think he's a redshirt freshman there, and that was ice water through the veins to hit that one, which was impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just kind of sad that the kicking game, including the punting, is something the Iowa fans have to look forward to because it's one of the
really
only
important
things. Yeah, like they get I remember seeing in that game. I remember thinking that the Iowa punter pinned Iowa State within the 5, and I thought the crowd's really cheering, and I thought, oh no, this is actually one of the things they cheer for. Like, a good punt is a big deal. Yeah. At that school, where for any other school, it's like, oh yeah, maybe we pinned them. Who cares? Like, it's something, but it's not the highlight. But for them, it's one of the highlights of the whole team, which is just really bad. All right, what do you got next?
The punters in the top 5. The punters in the top 5, like, most important offensive positions at Iowa, which is saying something.
Every year, he has to be. Like, he has to be.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, they have no chance. Yeah. All right. Well, what do you got next?
We can go to Tennessee, NC State. I thought that game was fantastic. That was the first time to see a whole game of Nico in action, and I thought he's terrific. He's still a freshman, but you could see the talent is there. The arm talent is there. His mobility is fantastic. And to go in and that offense, I love watching that offense. That is, they go lightning fast, but it's just how much stress they put on the defense is. I just that for me is the must watch TV. It's the Tennessee offense, and they beat a good team. So I think that really, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're pretty excited for the upcoming the rest of the season at work, because they did a really good job with that.
So I had a thought about that with the Tennessee offense and the Ole Miss offense and Sarkisian's offense. And I just thought, okay, so these, and Lincoln Riley. So let's take those 4. And you always hear them say that these guys are geniuses and they know what they're doing, and they're doing, they're hard to stop. And I thought there's enough brain power and resources on all of these teams that how do they not just copy it? How can Iowa or not just have a staff of people analyze what Tennessee is doing? Okay, I get it. You don't have Nico, but somebody who can throw at all and mimic. How can they not understand what those plays are and just mimic it? Like I clearly don't understand this well enough. I don't get how there can be 4 coordinators or 4 offensive game plans that are that much superior and that no one can figure it out, no one can stop it, and no one can copy it. I'm missing something because, and I'm not a coach. I don't know how any of that works, but how do coaches who get paid millions of dollars also not know how it works? Like they're surprised, like, wow, they did kick our ass. Like I didn't know how any of that was going to work, but you can't analyze it and break it down to its fundamental. But like, is there a fundamental philosophical way those 4 guys view offense and defense? And clearly they understand defense because they know how to beat it. So what is it that they're doing that other coaches are just every week they're like, that didn't work. Like I just don't get how nobody else can figure it out and nobody else can run. And then you look at the laughable joke of an offense Michigan or Iowa is running. So it's at a philosophical level. It must be, and it obviously doesn't work. But they also can't even try to make it look like with those guys, unless it's just talent based. But I don't believe that because everywhere Kiffin goes, that offense works. Everywhere Sarkisian goes, the offense. It doesn't matter who's running the offense; it works. Like Mike Leach, his offense just works. It doesn't matter who's running it. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad they're around because they're fun as hell to watch. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I love watching that offense. No, you're right. I think part of it is the philosophical part because when you have that good of a defense, one of the things you'd like to do is hold the ball in offense as long as you can, and so that you don't have to put your defense out there that much. And so when you go that fast, what would be a killer for Iowa would be like a quick 3 and out on offense, right? And then because then the defense is going to be on the field more, and then your unstoppable defense isn't going to. They'll get too tired at the end. So that's the thought process to try and hold on to it. I don't think they care if they don't score points, which is weird for that not being the goal in offense. But I think if they just hold the ball for like 5 minutes and then give it back to them, like that's a fine outcome compared to, because then they just give the other offense less time and less chances against their defense. But that's what's interesting is that how different that philosophy is with Tennessee and how with their defense, because their defense is good too, and they accept that risk that if when you go lightning fast, then you might not win the ball control, but God, it's just so obvious how much it stresses Tennessee's offense, stresses the other team's defense so much, and it's I don't understand why people don't look at it and be like, yeah, I want that too. I don't. How there's some coaches that look at that and say, no, I'm just going to keep it like, really uber conservative, and we'll just run that, and that's the best way to win. I mean, listen, it's worked for them. They've got Iowa's had 10 wins often, but yeah, in terms of a fan, I know what I prefer watching, which is the Tennessee offense. That's for sure.
And they housed them. I don't know if Tennessee's that good or if NC State is just that bad. I actually think Tennessee's that good. Like I think it's a bit of both. I don't think.
Well, it looked like they were the problem I had about that game. It was the sub rule, right? So I don't know if you noticed that, but when one team on offense, when they sub, then you have to give time for the defense to sub, and so the play clock was running down, and NC State subbed a position, and then the Tennessee defensive lineman just started walking out there to sub with the other person, and then the play clock was going to expire, so NC State had to take a timeout to stop it, which doesn't seem right. So they got to do something about that substitution rule, because the spirit of it is good, but you can't have the other team dictate when you have to take a timeout. So that was my only problem with that. But other than that, it was a good game, and it looked like NC State was.
I have that exact same note about the sub rule. It's happening all over the place. And it's infuriating watching obviously coaches are going to get any advantage they can, but that's not in the spirit of the game. And I noticed that happen. I think it also happened in the Oklahoma State game, but a critical point. And watching the other team, the defense, once the offense subs, right, you have to give the defense an option to sub. And then the ref steps in and prevents them from doing anything. And you're right, the defense can just meander off the field and either take a delay of game or force them to burn a timeout. That, I don't know how to solve it, but that is such a obvious way to game the system and kill people's timeouts. So I don't, or take a delay of game. Either way, that's way too easy to game that rule. And it looks like they're clearly doing it because, like you said, the linemen are jogging off. I mean, they're in a jogging stride, but they're going slower than a walk. And they're killing the entire play clock. So something that plus the late slide thing, those are both things that are now, I think, being manipulated on purpose because it happened again. And it's even happening in the pros now too. That slide very, very late and draw a foul. So, anyways, moving on.
Yeah, they showed. I saw a clip of that the other day with Pickett doing the fake slide and then kept going, and it looked really egregious then, and you can see why they had to change something about that. But yeah,
they're gonna have to change it again because now they're not fake sliding; they're just sliding at the very, very last minute and drawing penalties almost at will. So, sorry, I cut you off. Do you have anything left there before we move on to the next game?
Yep. Nope. That was it for the Tennessee NC State that I had. It's really exciting. I'm looking forward to watching their offense going forward.
All right, what do you got next? Actually, I have a question for you. What did you think? So, what did you think of the Texas Michigan game?
I thought it was good. I thought that Texas looked like the better team. I thought that to go into Michigan and win isn't nothing, so that was I thought that was a pretty good statement win for them. And one of my takeaway messages from this was that turnovers will kill you. Like that'll be a recurring theme in the NCAA and our NFL segment today. That the turnovers are the great equalizer because you can be playing well on offense or defense, and it all goes out the window on a turnover, especially when they're deep in the opponent's territory or in the end zone. That really changes when the margin is so small for victory, especially in the NFL, but also in the NCAA. The turnovers are going to get you, and that's something that their Michigan can't expect to win when they have any turnover like that against such a good team.
Did you think the difference in that game was just turnovers?
No, I thought that was but that really put Michigan on their back foot going forward. I think when you put in a senior QB that has not really had a lot of starting experience but is a senior and he throws an interception, I think it's going to be really hard to come back from that. So what was your take from it?
Texas could have turned it over 4 times and still killed them. Like that was a mismatch that was a mismatch at all levels. I don't think Michigan deserves to be on the field with Texas. I remember watching that maybe, I don't know, end of first quarter. I'm like, they can't beat them. Texas is going to kill them. Like there's no, it's just obvious to a man. We're talking about teams in different stratosphere here. They whipped them on the line of scrimmage. Like, where is this Michigan defense? The Texas offensive line was whipping them and their defensive line was whipping them. There was nothing on the Michigan side, save for that star cornerback, that could play against Texas. Like turnovers or not, there was nothing there nothing on the Michigan sideline was good enough to play against that Texas team that I could tell. And here's an example of 2 QBs and you got none. And Texas has got 3 QBs. So Michigan's just, I mean, a lot of what was there is gone now. The coaching staff's gone. A bunch of good players is gone, and there's just nothing nothing on the shelves to back it up. So I think we're looking at a 3 or 4 loss team there.
Yeah, I think going into the season for Michigan, they thought the front 7 could be better this year than it was last year. And so to be pushed around that much against Texas was eye-opening because the other teams on their schedule, like Ohio State, are going to have an offensive line like that as well. So that doesn't bode well for them going forward. I was also curious how they started Warren, the QB, because there was also talk about the other guy starting with the more of the runner, which I think would have helped, especially with that offensive line not looking as good as they did. But it was an interesting choice to go with Warren and just bring the other one in, Orgy, every now and then. But yeah, Texas was the better team, and at Michigan is not nothing. Like that was a significant win for them.
Mm-hmm. It just looked like Texas was never in danger at all in that game. All right.
No.
Well, okay, so we might as well get on to the circus here. What'd you think of Nebraska and Colorado?
Yeah, that was a game I was really looking forward to. I mentioned it on our preview show last week that it's an old school rivalry, and I was looking forward to seeing that again. And I thought it was a terrible game. I didn't really enjoy it from a fan perspective. The Colorado's offense is really supposed to be good, and they didn't play. Nebraska's defense was much better than I anticipated. But it just wasn't a good game. I thought it was over early on, and I didn't think they had any chance of going back to it. And I was surprised how much more entertaining the Iowa State game was compared to the Nebraska-Colorado game. Because going into that, I never would have thought that. But it's no, I think that the Colorado's got they're not a lot has changed since last year. You know, there's too many transfers. They're not playing well together. And Shadur can't do everything by himself, and they've got some pieces around, but it's not enough to overcome that. So, and if there's ever a time where the quarterback or where a wide receiver like drops a ball, like then they're really in a lot of trouble. So, if you're a Nebraska fan, Raiola looks good and the defense looks really good. So I think they're a little ahead of schedule in terms of where their rebuild was really going to be when they hired Rule. But that was. Yeah, and that there was a pick six. I don't know if you saw that, where literally on their own like 10 or 20 yard line, and in live time it looked like he threw it right at him. Now in the replay, it looked like a really good play by the cornerback, and they think there's going to be a first round draft pick in the NFL next year. But oh man, did it look terrible at the beginning? It's in live time, because that was a quick 14-0 at that point.
Nebraska's D line has a couple of monster guys on there.
Yeah,
Jesus,
they do.
Those are big looking
9
dudes.
or whatever
I think 9 and 6 or something.
And it really,
my God, that
really having their way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that reminds me of the old Nebraska teams, and that score was closer than how bad the game really was. I don't know if they must have just geared down in the second half and couldn't. I mean, I didn't even have eyes on this game after halftime. There's no point even watching it. It was so. I have a note here.
No,
Colorado is all sizzle, no steak. And it's interesting. They're an example of a team that's built from the outside in. So not the lines, not the D or O lines. They're built. I mean, they do have what might be the best player in the whole country, who's a receiver and DB, and he's the best DB and receiver on the team. They've got a good quarterback. That's probably an NFL level quarterback. They've got a couple of good receivers, maybe a couple of good DBs, and that's nothing if you don't have a line. It just doesn't matter who's on the perimeter if the guts of your team isn't there, the guts being the front seven on defense and the O line, and that's just what they are. They're kind of a hollow team. Also, I just don't think Deion's there for long. I think he's a bit of a farce, given the fact that he's recruited 0 players from high. Yes, he's recruited 0 players from high school. I think he literally had almost no recruits. It was all
their left
transfers.
tackle was a 5-star. Their left tackle's like a 5-star freshman, but he's probably shouldn't be starting because he's a freshman. But other than that, it's significantly more transfers than
they need.
Recruits,
They need him to play all of the defensive line positions too. I mean, there's just nothing there. But man, I honestly don't trust any of his rhetoric that he's going to be there after Hunter and his sons leave. I just don't think he's long term there. I think he's just going. He's either going to retire or I don't know, go with them wherever. I just don't. He's just not proving that he's serious about building a team at all. No.
Yeah, you're right about Travis Hunter. He's an amazing player. It's really, not only does he play both ways, but he makes outstanding plays as a wide receiver and it's outstanding plays as a defensive back. He had a catch and run that was incredible as a wide receiver. And then one of the best defensive plays I saw when they had a quick pass out to the wide receiver and he just ran by the guy that was supposed to block him and tackled the the receiver for a loss, and he's really good. It's an amazing talent that guy has.
Mm-hmm. I just wonder if someone that overwhelmingly good at maybe D tackle would have more of an impact on the game. Like he's a complete shutdown corner, and he's the best receiver no matter who they're playing against. But it's not enough to overcome a team that's just better than you. I mean, it can't even. I mean, a player that good can't even keep them close.
Yeah. Well, and he's not only a good shutdown corner; he's really good against the run. Like it's it's a combined corner and safety. He's outstanding. So that's that'll be interesting to see. That's a good point about Dion and how long you would stay there, but that could be that could change things going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, next. Well, okay. So I don't know how many other games I don't know how many other games you had eyes on. I have a note here that. When this week started, I know in our preview we were talking about how this didn't. I think I said this looked like maybe the weakest of the college weeks that I could see on paper, and then it turned out to be one of the best with like the upset of Notre Dame and some of these games that I just didn't expect to go the way they went. And this is part of the fun of college. You just get you get games the NFL can't produce. You get wild results, and you get huge swings in momentum. You get huge disparities in the box score versus what actually happened, a la Oklahoma State getting outgained 600 yards to 300 yards, but winning the game, which is just wild. I mean, Did you have eyes on that game?
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy.
No, I did, that was because it
was crazy.
That went to double overtime too.
Double overtime. The refs. Oh my God, the refs are horrific. They screwed up the clock management and basically almost gave the game away to Arkansas at the end. Arkansas did everything in their power to lose that game, and they eventually did lose. But the refs were also not on Oklahoma State's side with how badly they mismanaged some calls at the end of the game. And I thought Gundy, I think, aged 10 years just trying to deal with how badly the refs screwed that up and basically screwing him out of the. It was so bad. And this kept happening in like different games in college and in the NFL. I just have a note saying the refs got to get their act together. Some of this end half stuff and end game stuff, it was really, really bad. Anyways, that game just was an example of you just don't know what you're getting in college, where that sort of thing just doesn't happen in the NFL. You just don't get wild outcomes where afterwards you actually can't believe it went that way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and that's a really good point about the officiating. That's just as well you didn't see the second half of the Nebraska-Colorado, because that was one of the notes that I had down in that game. Was way too many penalties in the second half. Like almost every play was flagged. There was numerous reviews, which just brought it down to a glacial pace, which made it unwatchable. And so not only was the score not helpful at that point, but like the penalties really, really ruined the watchability as a fan watching that game. So it's a really good point about the officials, because that can change what it feels like watching a game significantly.
Like, I get it. They're trying to get it right, but holy smokes, as a television product and which is how they get paid, it's for them to be the least important thing in a game, not the most important thing. So there's a line between, I mean, it's just, they can't, I don't know. I guess they're just trying to get it right, but holy smokes, some of those, it looked like they were actively trying to sabotage the game, almost for both teams. They were just like, well, this is about us. It's how it feels sometimes when they're just having a conversation amongst themselves. I'm like, let's get this game going. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's a flow to this that you're just destroying right now.
No, any time the officiating feels like makes that transition to it's about us more than the people on the field, it always makes it worse. And that happens in other sports too sometimes. And baseball umpiring is one of them. But that's they gotta, like you said, it's important to get the call right and understand the review part. But man, are they really sacrificing some of the watchability of it? Which is really the main. This is a TV product at the end of the day, and that money is controlling it. So it was disappointing. The other note that I had was that for the I'm getting near the end here, the NCAA part, but the hip drop tackle still in the NCAA and not the NFL, and I noticed it. So there was definitely some games where
I actually wasn't.
There was
I
some
didn't
tackles
notice.
that were made. Oh yeah, no, I noticed it significant. There was several tackles, a couple in the Texas Michigan game, and a couple in the Tennessee game as well. That was right out of the textbook for like what would be a penalty now in the NFL. So it's hopefully there won't be a serious injury with something like that, because that's unfortunately what it takes for them to change the rule for those things. But that's not, and we'll get to it in our NFL segment, but it never really came up in the NFL games I watched. So that looks like it's something that can be changed. It wouldn't change, significantly parts of the game. So.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I'm done with the college, so moving on to the NFL now?
No, I just got one other note for the NCAA is that there was a couple of good teams that held serve, like Alabama and Ole Miss and stuff, and then there was a couple of sweaty wins too, right? So it was Oregon over Boise State was 37-34, and Oklahoma over Houston, which was 16-12, is a score you don't see very often. And so, but that's the difference, right? Like if, when you lose those games, then they're all of a sudden they're on Barbin's, like, you're off the board list, right? Like FSU and Notre Dame. But, every now and then you might win one ugly, and that's still important because it goes down as a win, and that it really feels different than a loss. And that's why they play the game. But that's, getting the occasional sweaty win is fine, because as long as you get the win, because otherwise, that's a big difference. So those teams that gives them a lot of film to look at, a lot of things to improve next week, because Oregon is, supposed to be a top 10 team, and Oklahoma wants to be. So that's they'll need to get those get them ready for next week. And last point before we switch to the NFL, you made a good point. Says on paper that this week of the NCAA didn't look that good. Well, you wait till next week. I'll be interested to see what games you're interested in on next week. It's pretty thin, but you'll have to come to our preview show to hear about that.
That's right. Well, who knows? If it turns out like this week, it doesn't really matter what it's going to look like on paper. I agree. I did have that on shaky
That's what
ground.
I'm hoping.
I have an on shaky ground category, and I have Oregon, Oklahoma, and Penn State. None of the three of them have. They just don't look. They just don't look like Tennessee, or don't look like Texas, or don't look like the teams that we were assuming they would be in the same category as. And they just shouldn't have to struggle the way they're struggling right now with these teams. So they look like they're ripe for the pickings against a team who's, with any better talent than what they've faced. And then I have one other team by itself in a category that says cannot get their act together, and that's Auburn. They just, what's going on there? They should
Cal.
be. They just come on. Like, I think you and I and a few other people can beat Cal. So sorry, Cal fans, but come on. Just what's going on there? Like, there's just too much resources, too much. That just shouldn't be this. It shouldn't be this hard for Auburn to get its act together. So I don't know. Maybe he'll get it there, but for now it's just not looking good.
And they had a returning QB too. So and it's the second year with the freeze, right? So it's I thought it was at least second.
Well, I don't think that QB is very good though.
But that losing to Cal was not on the schedule for Auburn this year. So that's disappointing.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
all right.
good.
Let's move to Sunday.
Moving on to NFL. All right. So I guess we're gonna start on Thursday, but moving on to the NFL, Ravens Chiefs. I have a note here that says Xavier Worthy 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a problem, and then in brackets Percy Harvin. So that end around looks like he was going to get stopped for 5-yard gain, and then he just ran right past everybody. And I just thought, the Chiefs are so strong as it is, and now they have a deep threat with that kind of capability. Also, not just a deep threat, but he scored on an end around, just out accelerated everybody. It's like, oh man, like all Andy Reid needs is a guy like that now. Now everyone has to deal with that. I don't know if that's just an anomaly, but it's not like the Ravens are a pushover defense. Like, I get it, they're missing a few pieces from last year, but man, That's a real problem. If now they have that piece. If this is even a remote indication that this guy can contribute like this, they just leveled up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always shocked when an end around works in the NFL. The overall team speed on defense is so high, and the open field tackling is so good that it's always surprising when the teams choose to do it and it works. And so but he's really Worthy looks like a difference maker, on offense, and it's it's rare to see someone look that fast in college and then go to NFL and it looks just as fast, and considering the competition they're playing against. The note with this game is that I had 2 games in this. I had KC in Baltimore and I had Detroit, LA, and I said both those games looked like playoff games. Both teams, all 4 teams in them looked great. Worthy looks like a significant addition to KC, and Jameson Williams for the Detroit, it looks like a significant addition to them, and the same thing with their speed. So there's a lot of similarities between those 2 games. They both felt like playoff games. Both executed well on both sides of the ball for both teams, and just some scary talent on the fields for both of them. With what's his name? Williams.
Jameson Williams.
What's his name?
Jameson Williams.
Yeah, because he's coming off an ACL tear too before,
and so
he looks like he's fully recovered. So yeah, so the unrelated, but it's because he wasn't gambling with one of his ligaments, but it was it was that he looks really dangerous, and both of them, so to having a good team where you add a significant piece like that, that's going to be big.
Yeah, I have that note too. Jameson Williams is going to be a problem for the NFC. That's kind of what they thought they were getting with him when they drafted him. And then I think everyone just sort of forgot about him because of he hasn't played much because of the injury and then the suspension. It's like, oh, whatever. There's this other guy. But he was a burner coming out of college. Like everyone expected him. What we just saw is kind of what people thought they were getting. And now if he's going to realize that potential, Detroit's a really big problem now. And you're right. It's a parallel with Worthy. It's just like elite speed, and if the coordinator knows how to fit him in, and these coordinators definitely know how to make those guys fit in, Jesus, they both just leveled up big time.
Yeah, and those are the type of Worthy and that guy are the type of person that the other team is going to have to scheme for. Like they'll have defensive meetings just about that and how to put themselves in a position to stop it. So it really makes a big difference. So that's something that's really changed over the last 10 years in the NFL, is having a really dynamic wide receiver is a really important position, that it's hard to win without that. And so when you can add someone in the draft and starts contributing this early, as in Worthy's case, and the Jameson still is only 2 years out, I think, or something, but that's going to be big for them going forward.
All right. What'd you think of the, did you get eyes on the game in Brazil?
Yeah, so I saw that. What'd you think?
I thought it was awful. The atmosphere was terrible. The crowd just absolutely sucked. There was no energy. All of the whistling, like it's an international soccer game, like that is the
whistling
worst
thing was annoying.
That was the worst NFL presentation I've seen that I can remember. It was so awful. It was dead.
Wow.
There was no energy. The crowd, I don't even think the crowd knew what they were cheering for. There was people in the stands wearing Dolphins jerseys. Like, I'm surprised there wasn't someone with their chest painted saying "Go Sports." Like it. Did they even? Was there even Eagle fans or Packers fans there when there was a big play where you just expect to hear a cheer? You kind of got, oh hey, like nothing, like just. They just, I don't think they really knew what they were watching. Clearly, there was no true NFL fans who really knew what was going on there. It was just a terrible broadcast all the way around. And then their announcer was just, it sounded like he was calling a soccer game, like the public address announcer that you could hear on the broadcast, not the actual play-by-play guy and the color guy. And then, I don't know, I'm going to get a little political here. I don't know if people realize President Lula of Brazil just banned Twitter, X. So no one in Brazil can use Twitter or X.
Really?
And he suspended the bank accounts of Starlink, which is Elon Musk's satellite internet service. So Starlink can no longer do business in Brazil. And he's encouraging people to boycott Tesla.
Huh.
So you've essentially put an NFL game in a country that's descended into true authoritarianism with a president who's actively banning and censoring free speech right before you show up with the NFL. I just thought that's a real black eye in the NFL for sanctioning, passively or tacitly sanctioning a government that's doing that to its own people by hosting a game in that country, which is it's just a bad look. Like literally days ago, the president of this country is actively censoring free speech and boycotting one of the most prominent businessmen and entrepreneurs of your country, and he's suppressing it in his country while you bring them a game. I just thought that's just a terrible look. Yeah. Like, obviously that was scheduled way further ahead, but boy, geopolitically and when the end product's that awful, like the cheering, it just sucked. It just sucked all the way around. My final note on that is Eagles fans should be furious they lost a home game to that, like for that garbage, because they lose one home game here. Like, I don't know, season ticket holders should be irate about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a good point. It's the goal, is to bring the game to other places outside the U.S. to grow the game, but in that bringing it to Brazil at that time with those decisions being made doesn't meet that goal. I think is safe to say. So it's I agree with everything you said about the whistling was driving me nuts, and before I was excited for our preview show, I was excited for the game that was at a neutral site because I was interested to see what that would do for Green Bay and Philly in terms of running their offense. But I made a mistake. I thought I projected that it was going to be a neutral site like, in Atlanta or Charlotte or something, but it was not. It was in Brazil. It was, like you said, the announcing wasn't good and the whistling, and I was a little worried about the field conditions. There was a lot of people slipping. I don't know if it's just not something they're not used to in terms of the size of the players and or the types of cleats that they use. But that wasn't good. Love got injured there at the end with his MCL. So that was also a concern about that game. The only positive I had from it, that Philly fans should feel that Barkley is the free agent signing of the year so far, because he looks great in that system. He had 3 TDs. They've had good running backs before, but he's such a difference maker that you're going to ask Hurts to not have to do as much as the QB, and so that could really change things for Philly. And that's the feeling going in. Like, there was all the talk about Hurts and the QB, and are they on the same page? But playing like that is going to solve a lot of problems going forward. So, and Barkley is a fantastic addition to them.
I can't imagine what Giants fans feel like right now after watching that. Louise, how did that feel? I know you didn't like. I didn't know you didn't like it. Louise is my favorite Giants fan right now. It's so bad. It's so bad especially after watching Hard Knocks and having a bit of a spotlight on them. And then that was the player that the owner of the Giants said he's not going to be able to sleep at night if he goes to Philly. He goes to Philly and he lights it up in the first game. And you're right, the field was horrific. Everything about that game was a total fail. Barkley looks great. And and on that note, let's transition to my disaster watch team, the Giants. And holy smokes, the Giants are a joke. That is an awful, awful team. Jones is not the answer. That's just a great example of a waste of $80 million. Joe Shane has no chance now of keeping his job. The only highlight of that Giants games was those throwback uniforms were amazing. But that's it. They looked cool. Dexter Lawrence is the only piece they have. I don't know what you do with a team that's that bad. Do you trade him away for as many picks as you can get and just fully admit you're rebuilding? I mean, you got rid of, Malik Neighbors, what a good player on such a bad team. Like, what a pointless pick. I don't know. This team is just a joke.
Yeah.
Like, they're terrible. You know, did you get eyes on that? Did you even bother watching?
Booing them early. Yep. No, I did. I saw some of it. I was they were booing early there in New York, and which is never a good sign. Like New York's a great place to play when things are going well, but they'll let you know when things aren't going well, and so that's going to be really tough for them going forward because I don't know how they get out of that. Like you said, it's a roster construction, and that's a problem, and so that isn't fixed easily. And even though you have a potential difference maker at wide receiver, you could see how little difference that made in this situation. So they're in rough shape, and I feel bad for the fans there because the Giants have been a good team, and they're not going to be, and it doesn't seem like they will be for some time. I don't know how you get out of that quickly.
It's really bad. To me, that's just, I mean, I don't know either. I'm not a GM, but holy smokes, any of us could have made just as bad of decisions as Shane made. This, like was it Neighbors can't throw the ball to himself. Somebody actually has to throw the ball.
No. Yeah. No, that's the wide receiver can only do so much. So I had something ahead of my list that bothered me more than the Brazil game or the Giants, though. So I'll throw that out here at this point. And that is the amount of attention and explaining and uselessness of the new kickoff rule has affected all the games. And every game I watched, they have to highlight the 20-yard area where they catch the ball. There's a re-explanation of the rule. There's a re-explanation of what happens with the ball position. Sometimes it's the 30, sometimes it's the 25. There's a rules analyst that they ask, which is for information on that every time. And it's really, I get why they added it, why they changed it, and it's a good thing for player safety. But man, is this a rule change that is resulting in a significant change to the game, but also like the process of the game, like my favorite example of a significant rule change that didn't change the game was the pitch clock in baseball. It's the exact same game. You just have less time between it. It didn't change anything else. And the explanation seemed like to take about 30 seconds. It's like you need to get the pitch off before the batter has to look at the pitcher before 8 seconds, then you have to throw it before it hits 0. That's it. And then it was never brought up again. And it was never, Manny Machado got a strike against him the first game, never heard from it since, and this was at every game, every 1 o'clock game, every 4 o'clock game, every 8 o'clock game, though only one of them. But they went over it each time, and each time there was a different ball positioning and stuff, and that was just I found that really annoying, but for the whole day.
I don't think they expect everyone to be as much of degenerates as us watching every single game. Like a lot of people, they watch their team and that's it. So they needed that. Like the people who only watch one game, maybe one other game.
Yeah.
We're 8 games in. We're like, okay, we've seen enough of this. I don't think they expect everyone to be quite like that. I agree. But I think at some point they're just going to, towards the end of this season, they'll just assume everyone's heard that again and again and kind of know it by now. I wonder if they must have an agreement on how many times they'll do that. But I'm sure many people who just watch their own team, that's the first time they saw it, even though we watched all the games. So you think like next week in the NFL, they're not going to do that for all the games? No. I think maybe some point throughout the season, maybe 8-9 games in, they'll like, that's enough. If people haven't watched the broadcast by now.
Wow.
Do you think someone's starting halfway through the season? It's the first NFL game they're watching? I don't think that's the case. I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll find out towards the end of the season. Yeah. But I agree. But I
hope they don't show that again.
They're gonna. But that is a game changer. If you put it through the end zone, you've just started on a 30-yard line, and if you try to control it, like I saw one go out of bounds towards the end of the game, which is a critical mistake. So put the other team on the 40. I can't remember which game it was. And already a kick return for a touchdown, which I think was in the Bills game. So it's a thing. You got to be really sure what you're doing with it, because I think we're going to see a lot of kick return touchdowns, if not on purpose, as far as the kicking team purposely putting it in play, maybe even accidentally putting it, like not quite getting it all the way to the end zone for a touchback. I can see the whole thing just turning into touchbacks, and the whole thing just starts the game on the 30-yard line instead of the 25. That seems to be the most conservative way to do it for the kicking team. But I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk for how easy it seems like you could break one. And just some long returns. We've seen some long returns. So it's doing something. If you put it in play, you're gambling. As a kicking team, you're really gambling if you put it in play. And if you try to squib it or do the sidewinder thing, you can easily put it right out of play. It seems like. It was funny, the announcer, he was like, well, how hard is it to kick that? The field is 53 yards wide. How hard is it to not...
Yeah.
Just, yes, I get you're going for this, the line drive funny bounce, but the kicker just hooked it right out of bounds. So I guess that's not as easy as we think it might be to just, well, why don't you just kick it low and make it really awkward to catch? But apparently that's not that easy. So that's going to evolve. Obviously, I don't know. Maybe some team will actually figure out a real good strategy who's got a kicker who can really manipulate the ball. But right now it seems like no one wants to risk getting creative with it, but it might make for some crazy end of game stuff where you kind of need to hopefully get a big return to win a game. We've seen that a couple times already where it was really desperate. I think the Green Bay tried to do it towards the end of the game. They chose to run it back even out of the end zone. They didn't get anywhere, but they were running out of time, so they had to try something. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think a couple of games will be decided on what goes on with the kickoff.
Really? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
I looked at it as like the team that's kicking off. I don't think they have there's any reason not to just kick it through the end zone. And I'm pretty sure every kicker can. So I don't know why they wouldn't do that, which is then really one step away from we just get rid of the kickoff and just start at the 30. But we'll see. Like you said, it's a big rule change, and I've noticed the difference in the games.
Yeah. Theoretically, scoring should be up because now the field's just got 5 yards shorter on touchbacks.
True.
All right. So
what else you got on your list?
On my must-watch teams, and this worked out so perfectly. The Falcons-Steelers game. I mean, I never had so much fun watching such a horrific offensive display. First of all, what on earth is up with Justin Fields in the center? They fumbled the first snap of the game. The same stuff that was happening all through the preseason. Somehow those two guys cannot literally convert the exchange of snap to the snap. I don't get it. I don't get how they can't figure that out. I don't know if they're just new to each other, and I don't know. And it seems like it's the under center stuff. It's not a shotgun stuff. He can't receive under center snap. I don't know. Anyways, so we've got quarterback controversies on both sides of that game, and it's because Cousins looked pedestrian at best. That offensive line's awful. He's not mobile. So if any pressure, he can't buy time. Not like how Fields can just buy. It looks like Fields can keep the play going for indefinitely. Like he could just keep it going and going and going. I'm not saying Cousins ever could, but man, the contrast between the two, like Fields can, I get it. He's not accurate, but he at least can extend the play. Cousins couldn't extend the play. He almost by definition shortens the play. Like he can't escape anything. As soon as there's pressure, he just goes straight down. So, and then he throws the back-breaking interception that loses the game. It's the exact controversy I was hoping for. And now I don't know what the media is doing. I haven't heard any of the media's response, but here we go with the bring on Penix stuff. I'll bet you it's going to come any minute now because I can already see how the fans are thinking, do we got our Daniel Jones here? Is this $100 million for a guy who just collapses in the pocket, throws interceptions? He's just old now. He can't overcome a bad offensive line. Maybe Penix could. I don't know. It's just, that was terrible. And the other crazy thing about that game, that felt like a neutral site game. I just cannot believe how many Steelers fans were there. The crowd was going bananas all game long. Way louder. The atmosphere was so good. That game, it was crazy how much the crowd was on the Steelers side, and they panned up to the crowd a few times. And I know when we were in Florida, there were Steeler fans everywhere when we were at school in Florida.
Yeah.
I know that
Pittsburgh
team
travels
has it.
well.
I know they have fans all over the country, but my God, the Falcons team should feel a little, I don't know if embarrassed is the word, or the Falcons fans should be embarrassed. That felt like a Steeler home game. It actually took me a second to be like, wait. This isn't Atlanta, right? Because you know how you just cue into, if you watch football enough, you just expect the crowd to cheer a certain way when you're in a given stadium, because you're, the home team is on defense, the crowd should be very loud. Well, in this game, didn't matter who was on defense, the crowd was loud. So it just felt like a Steelers game, really. Like it just felt, I mean, it was a great atmosphere. Contrast that to the pathetic atmosphere of the Brazil game. Goodness me. And my only other note on that game, and I'll pass it over to you, is TJ Watt's going to waste his career on this team. He needs to get the hell out of that city. He's so good. He is so good. And you cannot single-handedly carry a team to the Super Bowl, but he's a Super Bowl caliber player. Like, he needs to be on a team that actually has a chance. And this team doesn't have a chance because their offense is that bad. But holy smokes, is he ever good?
Yeah, no, you did a good job. That's a lot of good points about that game. I think that one of the things I saw is they had Cousins tracked at going like at his much slower speed than he was before. Like just sort of general running speed is way slower than it used to be. And it looks like he's still feeling some of the problems from the torn Achilles before. So, and he's older, right? So, because you're going to get slower as you get older. So, but that was something that they actually measured, and it was less. And no, I felt the same way about the crowd noise, because that stadium is often used for a neutral site game in college. So that happens all the time. It's the same Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that's the feeling it has for like a Virginia Tech Ohio State game or something, where it's kind of loud when both teams are on offense, and that's because it's closer to 50-50. So I've heard that before at that stadium, just not for a home Falcons game before. So that was surprising. But listen, I don't know if Wilson is the answer for Pittsburgh, and Fields can do enough. I think he can do enough with a good defense, and that it gives him a chance. So, that's
Jeff,
good on him. They can.
No, he can't. 18 points doesn't.
No,
first of all,
no?
the classic NFL 18 points, like, it's terrible.
Yeah.
You should lose every game
rough.
if you score 18
but it's
points.
Anyway, but it's
so bad.
That's true unless the other team, only scores 10. But anyway, so we'll go. I'll go to the next game on my list, which was the biggest upset of the day, which is New England beating Cincinnati, and that was the biggest point spread going into today. That day was Cincinnati favored by 9. It shows you how smaller the point spreads are in the NFL versus college, because the biggest upset in college was Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame. That was 28.5. This was 9, which was a massive spread in the NFL, but New England going in and winning it. It's the New England's defense looked good. I don't know if it's how much their defense looked good or that Cincy's offense didn't look good, which is kind of scary. Burrow seemed to throw the ball well, but this was another game. I mentioned this at the end of the NCAA segment. Turnovers are going to kill you. And so there was a 14-point swing in the Cincy game when they were about to score, and he fumbled it in the end zone, and then New England came back and scored. And you just can't – the margins are so small in the NFL, I honestly don't think you can recover from something like that. So New England's defense looked good. Cincy's offense didn't look good. Jacoby Brissett was a you declared it as sort of saying the season is over when they're starting him instead of the rookie, but all he did was go into Cincinnati and win. So hats off to them, because that's exactly the type of game that had to happen for them to win. Really good defense, don't turn it over, and then you got a chance, which I guess is what they were. That had to be the plan going in, and that's what they ended up doing.
What did they get? 16 points, something like that. Like
yes,
that's not
16 to 10.
That's not the answer. You should also lose every game in the NFL if you only score 16 points. But if the other team only gets 10, right? No, Brissett's not the answer. The team, this is a lost season. It's just something's wrong with Cincinnati. That was, I get it. There was turnovers, but that's 10 points is really bad. Like, that's really bad. Like, I get it. They fumbled through the end zone, but so did Jacksonville. I mean, it was, well, what's with that fumbling? Like, God damn.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Turnovers.
Really bad.
The turnovers are going to kill you. Yeah, the turnovers. There was an interception in the end zone in the Detroit LA game, I think, and then there's a fumble through the end zone. Like, and those are, even though it's professional players, compared to the college, like those turnovers will kill you because it's the margin's too small. So
yeah, the Jacksonville game, that seemed to turn the entire game because they were rolling, and he fumbled.
Yep.
If they went in, they were going to go up 2 scores, and it looked like they were just going to control that game. And then it just fell apart, and the Dolphins defense just took over. I didn't really have too many notes on that game. That was just pretty. That's just dramatic how much that affected them.
Yep, that was in the same category for me because I think if Cincy scores in that case, I think they are more in that game than they would have been obviously otherwise. And same thing with the Jacksonville-Miami one. That turnover is crazy. And turnovers are interesting because there's, on one hand, you can control some of them in terms of like interceptions or things like that maybe, but then there's really a lot of them is just happenstance. And so it's crazy that so much preparation goes into these games, but it's something that is so fluky as a turnover, but really determines the outcome.
Yeah, maybe the timing of the turnover because the Dolphins DB just physically punched the ball. It was a perfect play right on the 1 yard line as Etienne was about to cross.
Yep.
He punched it out. That's just a lack of ball security. Like, you're an NFL running back, you should never have the ball punched out. Like, you should know enough to cover with both hands. Now, obviously it's a superior play, but again, you're number one, you're a first round draft pick. That cannot happen. That cannot happen at that point on the field. So anyways, it's funny. I just listened to a podcast where people say, well, that cannot happen, but it did happen. So, and you saw him on the bench.
It did.
I think he knew it. The game just fell apart right after that point. All right. So I've got a kind of a rapid fire list here. I don't want to cover every single game, but I might just run through a couple of notes here, and then you just let me know what you think of some of these things. The Bears, that was the most ridiculous win I've ever seen. No offensive touchdowns. How is that even possible? Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's a win, but boy, Williams was, I don't even want to say mediocre. He was just bad. I don't know if there's anything to be proud of with that game. That's more a testament of how terrible the Titans are. But I mean, I guess a win's a win, but that won't happen in another 100 tries. How do you win a game with no offensive touchdowns?
No, but that's where, to your point earlier, when you said like a team shouldn't win if they only score 18 points, teams shouldn't win the game if they don't score an offensive touchdown. So that's really crazy that they won that one and what the defense had to do for that. And now I'm starting to, we talked about this with our earlier show that, Caleb Williams in a few of the preseason games sat out a lot because they were sort of looking at his protecting and not getting injured. But, it looked like it was moving real fast for him on that day. And so that's, again, it's a rookie's first game. This happens. They'll have to get used to it, but it's, the more experience is going to be important. But it's, that's the all defensive effort for Chicago there. So they don't have to worry about their defense, but then they've been saying that for also 20 years. So,
right. Yeah. Another one I have here is, Bryce Young and the Panthers. That is the worst looking team I've seen in a long time. I know we were hoping he might turn it around. I don't even think he's going to be in the league next year if this is an indication of how bad they're going to be. I mean, that was laughably bad. This looked like a college FCS team getting beat up by a top level Power 5 team. That was pathetic.
they made New Orleans look so good. So one of the articles I read that said it harkened back to like the Drew Brees era, like when New Orleans was like that, and that's the Carolina's awful.
Just there's nothing else to say about it. They're awful. He's terrible. That's all there is to say there. Another note, Jaden Daniels was the best looking, I think, rookie QB. He kind of, he's some rough spots, but the one thing I really noticed was when he takes off and runs, how elusive he is. And this was a weird note. I said, I never feel like he's in danger of taking a big hit. Like, I know he got popped a lot in college, but however this particular game went, he just seemed to find space, and it just never looked like anyone had a good angle on him. Maybe it's just an anomaly, or maybe he's got a little bit of coaching saying, like, hey, you can take off, but you cannot take hits. And he seemed to end every run either with a slide or just going out of bounds, like no one really putting a hand on him. And I thought, okay, so I could be totally naive here, but that to me seems like a sustainable way to do the running thing. And he got 2 running touchdowns. But again, lots of work there, but he seemed somewhat effective. The running seemed quite effective. And every time he took off, I mean, he got where he needed to go almost every time. So it was, that team needs a lot of work. I don't think they have a lot of pieces around him or anything, but he looked like, okay, this might be a sustainable way to play. And it might actually work if this is a system where he knows how to not get like lit up when he goes for a run. But I don't know. It was just the one thing that stuck out amongst the rookie QBs, that he looked like the one that had some serious potential. Bo Nix looked pretty rough. There's going to be a big learning curve over there.
No, it's Daniels is good, and you're right. There's definitely a running style to that, because there's not every QB that's a good runner avoids contact as well as he did. So, and I'm thinking of Josh Allen right now off the top of my head. Like, he can move too, but then he gets hit. So that's absolutely a skill, is to be able to run and like that. And that's going to be important for him going forward, especially this year with Washington, like you said, because they're not a great team.
Yeah, Josh Allen Daniels did not have Josh Allen's body. Speaking of which, that guy's an alien. He's so good. Now, he did hurt his hand on that dive into the end zone. I hope that's not it doesn't look like it's anything serious, but
non-throwing hand.
Yeah,
non-throwing hand. So that makes me less concerned. But but no, that was, I felt like they played. That was sort of 4 games in one, in that one. Like they were down early. It's like they had a bad loss, and then they had to come back from it, and then the changing how much they ran the ball versus throwing the ball was like another 2 games. And so I feel like they sort of got their season of their bumps in the road out in like in a half, and then now they can just roll like now going forward. So hopefully that works for them. But that's a good comeback win. It's the first game. Shows a lot of chutzpah at the beginning.
That's the best the Bills' run game has looked in a while too. If that's consistent, that's a huge boost for that offense, because they've just struggled to run. But if that's going to work, that's big time. Coleman looked good too, which is, they really needed that. They needed another receiver to come on, so that's good. My last item here was Baker Mayfield had a day, and Mike Evans is Jesus Christ, that guy's great. Like, it's been so long now,
Still good.
10 seasons now, but when you see him, you're like, that's one of the best receivers in the NFL, and it's just obvious how good he is. So, anyways, that looks like a nice little marriage there, Mayfield and the Bucs. That might be a consistent team for a little bit here. I think they might consistently win this division and make it to the playoffs. I would pick them right now in that division. They just look solid.
Yeah, no, Tampa looked good. You're right about the Evans. I always think back to Johnny Football, like, because that was his Heisman winning year, and he never really worked out in the pros. but that's who he was throwing to at A&M, and I feel like that wide receiver probably did some of the heavy lifting and some of the yards that when he was there, and maybe why it wasn't, that's stretching it a bit. That's one of the reasons why he didn't work out in the NFL. But that receiver's been great forever, and so he's very good. And you're right, that's a good call about the division. It's pretty much wide open, and so the Bucs being good, why not us, right? So
yeah. I think Evans just is under the radar because of where he is, even though he's won a Super Bowl and everything. It's just like I think we would talk a lot more about him if he was on the Giants or the Cowboys. But that guy's just awesome. All right, so I have one last thing I want to throw it over to you. Do you have anything else in the NFL?
No, that's basically it for me for the NFL.
All right, so then I want your expert opinion on the Jordan Love injury. The injuries have been piling up. I was watching the injury reports. The injuries are piling up on all kinds of teams. Like Noah Fant, the big time tackle, went out. I don't know if you got eyes or any information on that, but on the Jordan Love one, which is clearly the most important and significant injury, what's your take right now on how did that look and what do we expect on an MCL strain? Just give us a quick walkthrough of what you would expect and what could be expected, I guess, at all the different levels of what that strain could be, given we don't know everything about it just yet.
Sure. So this is our first segment on Dover's diagnosis.
Here we go.
And just to be clear, I've never met Jordan Love or have seen him in the clinic, so this is just all speculation on our part. But it's so as terms of how knee injuries go, this isn't a terrible one to have. It's the medial collateral ligaments, a ligament that's on the inside of the knee that got sprained, and the time frame they gave is very normal. It's 3 to 6 weeks. And the main thing they're going to be doing is just getting the pain and swelling down now, and then they strengthen the muscles across the knee joint, and it won't be. He might wear a brace when he comes back, but it's not too significant. It's not like the ACL where there's really a lot of movement between the tibia and the femur that needs to be controlled, and the MCL heals pretty well, so that's about normal. So it's really it's not an insignificant injury, but it's one of the more least significant knee injuries you can have. But it's still 3 to 6 weeks, and that would be 3 to 6 games. And so there's already some articles out about if they need to sign a backup or a different QB now, because that's not having your starting QB for 3 to 6 games is a lot. So that's enough to sign someone. There's a big difference between going 1-5 or 3-3 or something when the starter's out, right? So that'll be they'll probably have to address it because that's enough time.
And after let's say it takes 5 weeks, do we expect him full? Does that mean full speed 5 weeks later?
That once they return, they'll be fine because it's just on the inside of the knee. It doesn't really stop any of the flexion or extension movement. There won't be any. He can do a lot of muscle strengthening for the rehab for the quad and the hamstring and the gastroc, basically any muscle that crosses the knee joint. So and it won't be too limited for the strengthening because it's just it's on the inside of the knee. So he should be in good shape for that.
So if you could choose any injury, this is the one you'd choose if you had to. It's about as recoverable as it gets.
Well, and you can wear a brace after that really protects you too from like that valgus force, which is what's usually the cause of it. So it's the one of the more least concerning injuries going forward.
And on that injury, is it more susceptible to being re-injured, or you're kind of back to the same probability once it's healed?
Yeah, it's the same probability. Like if you get hit, that's the rule they're trying to really protect the quarterback in the NFL. And so that's one of the rule changes they made where you can't land on the legs. That happened to Matt Stafford in the Rams game where a lineman was coming to tackle him and then just hit him below the knee. And that's a penalty now. And they have to do that because that would be the way of injuring the knee. And so they've made those changes to try and protect the quarterback so they won't have that. So the risk of tearing the MCL or straining it going forward, spraining it, is no different really after the rehab. So
Right. The only issue there is 6 games might be enough to end the season. if he's out that many. They've already lost, and if the backup isn't competent and they can't maybe split games, they could have already blown the whole season if they go 1-5 in the next 6 weeks or whatever, 2-4. It's too bad. He just signed the contract too.
Yeah. Well, and you called it in one of our earlier shows too. It's like the number of QBs that played in the NFL over the course of the season was 60 last year or something like that, right? So it's a lot of the starters don't play every game. That's for sure. So it's
and here we
go.
A
lot of different QBs are going to get in there, and this is a case just like it. So
yep. All right. Well, I think that's all I had. Do you want to make a call on who for you won the week, the NFL or college?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good one. Both weeks were good. Both ends. I enjoyed watching the NCAA and enjoyed watching the NFL. For me, the NCAA won the week for me because I liked those two games with the Notre Dame game and the Iowa State game that came down with a field goal to win it on the road. And just to hear in the hostile environment go from super loud to super quiet in that case was really entertaining, and that crowd was significantly better than the one in Brazil. So that's for me, it's the NCAA wins the week.
I agree 100%. The surprising results in college won the week for me, and the minute I saw that Brazil game, I knew I was giving it to college because that was an embarrassment. That game was such an awful watching experience. That's just shame on the NFL for that. Was so bad. So they got to do something about that. They got to take that as a lesson to only put those games in places where you're going to get a real crowd, like you're going to get a real atmosphere. That I know it was an experiment, but boy, and then the timing with the president and the censorship, the whole thing was just so bad. So that's a black eye in the NFL for me. So yeah, college wins the week for sure.
Very good.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple of days.